So picture this, my sister, Sarah, looking me dead in the eye, holding out a crust of bread to my then 7-year-old son, Leo, while her own 2 kids, Mark and Lily, are tearing into what must have been $200 worth of steak. We didn't order for your son, she said, her voice dripping with an almost casual disdain, as if offering him a piece of stale bread was a kindness. My blood ran cold in that fancy restaurant, a place I had never imagined I'd, especially not under these circumstances. Was I wrong for what I did next? Tell me, honestly, would you have done the same thing if your child was treated that way? I still think about that night, about the choices I made, and I wonder if there was any other way to handle such a blatant act of cruelty disguised as family dinner. Let me take you back to how we even got to that point. My sister Sarah has always been, Sarah. She's 2 years older than me, and ever since we were kids, there's been this underlying current of competition, mostly from her side. I was always the quieter one, the artistic one, while she was the popular one, the successful one. Or at least that's how she saw it and how she wanted everyone else to see it. She married, to a man named Richard who comes from old money and has an equally old money attitude. They live in a sprawling house in the right part of town, drive luxury cars, and their kids, Mark and Lily, are enrolled in every expensive private club and academy you can imagine. My life, on the other hand, took a different path. I'm a single mom, working a decent but not glamorous job, raising Leo, who is, in my completely unbiased opinion, the most wonderful, sweet, and intelligent kid in the world. We live comfortably, but we don't have the kind of money Sarah and Richard flash around. This difference in our financial situations became the unspoken elephant in every room we shared, often made explicitly clear by Sarah's subtle and sometimes not so subtle jabs. The family dinner in question was supposedly a celebration of our parents' 40th wedding anniversary. My parents, bless their hearts, had always tried to keep the peace between us, often acting as intermediaries in our lifelong, one-sided rivalry. They chose a very upscale steakhouse, a place they'd saved up for, wanting to make the anniversary truly special. When they told me the name of the restaurant, my stomach immediately did a little flip. I knew it was expensive, beyond what I would typically spend on a single meal, but it was for my parents, so I didn't say anything. I just mentally prepared myself to order something modest, probably a salad or a small appetizer, just to be polite. My parents, being themselves, insisted on treating everyone, saying it was their gift to us. I tried to protest, knowing how much it would set them back, but they wouldn't hear of it. "It's a celebration, darling," my mom had said. "Don't you worry about a thing." I should have worried. On the day of the dinner, I dressed Leo in his best, slightly too small blazer and ironed his favorite dinosaur shirt. He was so excited. He loves going out, and even more, he loves spending time with his grandparents. He was also looking forward to seeing his cousins, Mark and Lily, though their interactions were usually a bit strained. Mark, a year older than Leo, and Lily, a year younger, were carbon copies of their parents, a bit entitled, always demanding attention, and quick to point out any perceived flaw in others. Especially Leo. I tried to prepare Leo for their usual antics, reminding him to be polite and to ignore any teasing, but a part of me always hoped that maybe, just this once, things would be different. A glimmer of hope that evaporated the moment we stepped into the restaurant and saw Sarah. She was already there with Richard and their kids, perched at a large, round table, looking perfectly coiffed and utterly self-satisfied. Sarah was wearing a designer dress I knew cost more than my rent, and Richard was in a suit that probably felt like a second skin to him. Mark and Lily were already on their iPads, barely acknowledging our arrival with a grunt. My parents were there too, looking a bit overwhelmed but happy to see us. We exchanged greetings, and I felt the familiar tension immediately. Sarah gave me a tight smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes in a perfunctory hug. She barely glanced at Leo. "Oh, you brought him?" she said, as if his presence was an unexpected inconvenience, even though it was a family dinner. I just nodded, trying to keep my composure. We all sat down, and the waiter, a very professional man in a crisp uniform, handed us menus. I subtly opened mine, doing a quick scan of the prices, and my eyes almost popped out. Steak entrees started at $80 and went well past $200 for the premium cuts. Side dishes were around $20 each. Even the salads were $30. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I knew my parents had said they were paying, but this was beyond extravagant. I decided I would just order a small pasta dish or an appetizer, something simple. When the waiter came to take our drink orders, Sarah and Richard, without hesitation, ordered expensive wines. My parents stuck to water, and I ordered a soda for Leo and myself. Mark and Lily, of course, ordered fancy non-alcoholic cocktails, because why not? Then came the food orders. My parents, after some deliberation, ordered 2 moderate steak dishes to share and a couple of sides. Sarah and Richard, however, went all out. "I'll have the Wagyu ribeye medium rare with the truffle mashed potatoes and asparagus," Richard declared, not even looking at the menu, as if he'd memorized it. Sarah chimed in, "And I'll have the New York strip rare with the creamed spinach and roasted mushrooms." Then came Mark and Lily. "I want the filet mignon," Mark said, mimicking his dad's tone. "And a side of fries?" Lily, not to be outdone, said, "Me too, but with extra butter on my steak." My parents looked a little wide-eyed at these orders, but didn't say anything. My mom subtly glanced at me, a silent apology in her eyes. I smiled back, trying to reassure her. When it was my turn, I looked at the menu again, trying to find the least offensive option. I was about to order a small pasta dish, but before I could, Sarah interjected. "Oh, don't worry about Leo. He can just share with you, right?" I froze. Share what? I hadn't even ordered anything for myself yet. And Leo, bless his heart, had been looking at the menu with wide eyes, trying to figure out what a filet mignon was. My voice caught in my throat. My mom, sensing my discomfort, quickly said, "Oh, darling, just order Leo something he likes. It's a celebration." But Sarah, ever so subtly, put her hand on my mom's arm.
No, Mom, it's fine.
Kids his age don't need a whole big meal. He can just pick at ours. Richard nodded in agreement, a smug look on his face. My dad cleared his throat, but before he could say anything. The waiter was looking at me expectantly. I felt my cheeks flush. I was mortified. I couldn't believe she was doing this, openly trying to make me feel small in front of everyone, especially Leo. I mumbled, "I'll just have the chicken Kaiser salad, please." And then, for Leo, I just said, "He'll be fine." I couldn't bring myself to argue in front of everyone, especially not in such a fancy place. I just wanted to disappear. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have argued? Would you have just let it go? How would you have reacted to your child being openly excluded and frankly insulted in such a public and demeaning way? I was sitting there, watching my son, who is usually so vibrant and talkative, shrink a little in his seat. He was trying to be brave, I could see it, but I could also see the confusion and hurt in his eyes as he watched his cousins eagerly awaiting their expensive meals, while he was told he'd just be fine. The appetizers arrived first. Sarah and Richard had ordered a colossal seafood platter, piled high with oysters, king crab legs, and jumbo shrimp. Mark and Lily had individual plates of fancy calamari. My parents shared a small plate of bruschetta. I had my salad and Leo had nothing. He watched with a polite curiosity as everyone else ate, occasionally glancing at me, a silent question in his eyes. I tried to distract him, talking about school, about his favorite video game, anything to keep his focus off the feast unfolding around him. It was excruciating. Then the main courses arrived. The table was transformed into a culinary display. Richard's Wagyu, Sarah's New York strip, Mark and Lily's filet mignons, all perfectly cooked, glistening under the restaurant lights. The aroma of rich beef and expensive spices filled the air. My chicken Caesar salad looked incredibly meager in comparison. Leo, bless his heart, tried to pretend he wasn't hungry. He started drawing on the paper tablecloth with a crayon I had in my purse, a dinosaur escaping a volcano. I watched him, my heart aching. Then it happened. Sarah, in a move that I can only describe as calculated cruelty, picked up a slice of the complimentary bread basket that had been placed on the table for everyone. It was a nice, crusty artisan bread, but still, it was just bread. She broke off a small piece, the crustiest part, and leaned over to Leo. "Here, Leo," she said, her voice saccharine sweet. "You can have this. We didn't order for your son." She smiled, a triumphant glint in her eyes, as she placed the bread in front of him. My parents gasped softly. My dad, who had been quiet up until then, started to say something, but I cut him off. A switch flipped inside me. I felt a cold, righteous fury surge through my veins. All the years of her subtle put-downs, her condescension, her attempts to make me feel less than, all culminated in that single, humiliating moment for my son. My son, who had done nothing but be a sweet, innocent child. I looked at Sarah, then at Leo, who was staring at the bread, his eyes welling up. He looked at me, a silent plea for understanding, for justice. And that's when I knew. I wasn't just going to sit there and take it anymore. I reached across the table, picked up the bread Sarah had given Leo, and calmly, deliberately placed it back into the bread basket. Then I looked her straight in the eye, my voice low and steady, but laced with an edge of steel I didn't know I possessed. "Sarah," I said, "that was incredibly rude. And you know what? My son deserves better than your scraps." Her smug smile faltered. Richard looked up from his steak, a flicker of annoyance on his face. Then I turned to the waiter, who had been discreetly standing by, clearly witnessing the entire exchange. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice now a little louder, commanding attention. "Could you please bring me the menu again?" The waiter, sensing the tension, quickly brought it over. I opened it, and without even looking at the prices this time, I pointed to the most expensive steak on the menu, the same Wagyu ribeye Richard had ordered. "My son," I announced, my gaze fixed on Sarah, "will have the Wagyu ribeye, medium rare, with truffle mashed potatoes and asparagus. And a glass of sparkling cider?" Sarah's jaw actually dropped. Richard scowled. My parents looked utterly stunned. My mom put a hand over her mouth. And for myself, I continued, "I'll have the same. And please bring another order of those truffle mashed potatoes just for Leo." I handed the menu back to the waiter, who, to his credit, just nodded professionally and walked away to place the order. The silence at the table was deafening. Sarah was sputtering, trying to form words, but nothing came out. Richard was red-faced. Mark and Lily, oblivious to the deeper drama, just stared at their steaks. My parents looked at me with a mixture of shock and, I think, a touch of admiration. What in the world was that? Sarah finally managed to hiss, her voice low and furious. "You can't just order the most expensive thing on the menu. Mom and Dad are paying." I met her gaze unflinching. "They said they were treating everyone, Sarah," I replied, my voice calm. "And everyone includes Leo and me. Or have you conveniently forgotten that? You were happy to let your kids feast while mine was offered bread. That's not a family dinner, that's an insult. And I won't have my son treated like a second-class citizen by anyone, especially not by his own aunt." Richard then chimed in, "That's completely unnecessary. You know how expensive this place is. You're taking advantage of your parents." I turned my gaze to him. "Richard," I said, my voice still steady, "you sit there and watch your wife humiliate a child, your own nephew, and say nothing. You're just as bad as she is. This isn't about money. It's about common decency, something you two clearly lack." My parents were just sitting there, wide-eyed, like spectators at a tennis match. My dad finally spoke up. Now, let's not fight. It's an anniversary dinner." But it was too late. The dam had broken. When our steaks arrived, perfectly cooked and presented, Leo's eyes lit up. He looked at me, a huge smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, Mommy," he whispered, and that was all the validation I needed. I cut his steak into bite-sized pieces, and he ate it slowly, savoring every mouthful, completely ignoring Sarah and Richard. who were now pointedly talking amongst themselves in hushed, angry tones. I ate my steak too, enjoying every bite, feeling a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about the expensive food. It was about standing up for myself, and more importantly, for my son. It was about drawing a line and saying, no more. The rest of the dinner was incredibly tense. Sarah and Richard barely spoke to me or my parents. They made a show of paying extra attention to Mark and Lily, trying to ignore the elephant-sized Wagyu steaks on my side of the table. My parents tried to lighten the mood, talking about old memories, but the atmosphere remained thick with resentment. When the bill came, it was indeed astronomical. My parents, looking a bit shocked at the final sum, quietly paid it. I could see Sarah and Richard exchanging glances, a smug satisfaction on their faces, probably thinking I had caused them to spend more. But I didn't care. The look on Leo's face, the way he had finally been treated with respect, was worth every penny. As we were leaving, Sarah pulled me aside, her voice a venomous whisper. You embarrassed me tonight. You and your son are never invited to anything again. I just looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt or intimidated. I felt a calm resolve. Good, I said, surprising even myself. Because honestly, Sarah, I don't want to be. Not if it means subjecting my son to your cruelty. You think your money makes you better than everyone, but it just makes you a meaner person. And that's something money can't fix. I turned and walked away, taking Leo's hand, leaving her standing there fuming. The aftermath was exactly as predicted. Sarah and Richard effectively cut ties with me and Leo. They stopped inviting us to family gatherings, and when we did see them at my parents' house, they barely acknowledged our existence. My parents, however, understood. My mom later told me privately that she was proud of me for standing up for Leo. Even though it created a rift, she said she had always been uncomfortable with Sarah's behavior but had never known how to address it. My dad, too, gave me a rare approving nod. Leo, meanwhile, was oblivious to the deeper family drama. He just remembered having the best steak ever and being treated like a king. And that, for me, was everything. Looking back, I don't regret a single thing. Sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand, especially when it comes to protecting your child. It might create uncomfortable situations, it might sever ties, but some things are more important than keeping the peace at any cost. Standing up for Leo, showing him that he is worthy of respect and kindness, was a far greater victory than any expensive dinner could ever be. It taught him and me a valuable lesson about self-worth and dignity. Like this video, if you were on my side and you think I did the right thing, subscribe for more stories like this, where I dive into the craziest and most unbelievable family dramas from Reddit. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section below. I'm really curious to hear what you would have done in my position. Until then, I'll see you all in the next story.